I was debugging code in my cramped Chicago studio when my phone rang for the fifth time that morning. Another unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. This is Allied Recovery Solutions. You have an outstanding debt of $50. 000. That requires immediate payment. $50,000. I'd never borrowed that kind of money in my entire life. There must be some mistake. I stammered, but the line had already gone dead. I had no idea this single phone call would expose the most devastating betrayal imaginable and destroy my family forever. My name is Jake Mitchell. I'm 30 years old. A software developer living in a 400 square foot studio apartment on Chicago's South Side. The place isn't much creaky hardwood floors, a Murphy bed that doubles as my couch, and a kitchen table that serves as my home office. But it's mine, paid for with honest work and zero help from anyone. I write mobile app code for Innovate Tech, a small startup in downtown Chicago. My routine was predictably simple: work 9 to 5, hit the gym afterward, grab weekend drinks with college friends, and endure monthly guilt trip visits to my parents in Oak Park whenever Mom started her emotional manipulation campaigns. My family seemed normal enough on the surface. Mom works as a manager at Whole Foods. Dad is a retired postal worker living on disability benefits. Then there's my older brother Marcus, 32 years old, and the family's eternal golden boy, despite being a complete disaster at life. While I've always been the reliable, the responsible one, Marcus has spent the last decade chasing delusional get-rich-quick schemes, food trucks that failed after 3 months, cryptocurrency trading that lost more money than it made, drop-shipping businesses from China that never shipped anything. Every venture crashes and burns spectacularly, and he always runs home to Mom and Dad with empty pockets and even bigger promises about his next breakthrough idea. Meanwhile, I'm the family's unofficial tech support department and emergency ATM machine. I fix their computers when they break, pay for their Netflix and Spotify accounts, and contribute $400 every month to help with the mortgage on Grandma Rose's old house where my parents live. Because their combined income barely covers the basic bills, not by choice, mind you, but because Mom's guilt trips about family loyalty and helping each other out were easier to endure than her constant nagging and emotional manipulation. After that first shocking phone call, the harassment escalated at a terrifying pace. 5 calls on Monday became 10 on Tuesday, then 15 on Wednesday. Different companies with official-sounding names, but always the same demand. I owed $50, 000, and needed to pay immediately or face serious legal consequences. Each caller possessed disturbing amounts of my personal information, my full legal name, home address, social security number, even details about my workplace at Innovate Tech. The threats grew increasingly specific and menacing. We know you work on LaSalle Street in downtown Chicago. Your neighbors have been asking questions about you. This is your absolute final warning before we begin wage garnishment proceedings. Completely panicked, I immediately pulled my credit report that same evening. My score was a pristine 785, with absolutely zero outstanding debts listed. I'd never taken out a loan larger than my $12. 000 Honda Civic, which I'd paid off completely 2 years earlier. But the relentless phone calls didn't stop. In fact, they got worse, much worse. The harassment campaign invaded my workplace. The breaking point came during our quarterly team meeting at Innovate Tech. I was presenting our mobile app development progress to the entire development team when my phone lit up with debt collector. I'd started labeling these numbers to avoid answering them accidentally. 20 colleagues watched as my face turned pale, and I quickly declined the call, trying to maintain my professional composure. Everything all right? Jake asked Sarah, our project manager, with genuine concern in her voice. Just spam calls. I lied through gritted teeth, attempting to refocus on my presentation about our latest app features. Then, 5 minutes later, My phone buzzed loudly with a text message that was visible to everyone in the conference room. Final notice, pay $50. 000 immediately, or we will contact Innovate Tech directly regarding your delinquent account. This is not a joke. My stomach dropped to the floor. My boss, Mr. Thompson, raised an eyebrow with obvious concern. The entire room fell into uncomfortable silence as 20 pairs of eyes stared at me. After the meeting ended, Sarah immediately pulled me aside into a private conference room. Jake, if you're having serious financial problems, you should know we have employee assistance programs that can help. I'm not in any debt. I insisted desperately, but her worried expression told me the damage to my professional reputation was already done. That same afternoon, our company receptionist informed me that 3 different collection agencies had called the main office number asking to verify my employment status and salary information. My career was being systematically destroyed by debts I had never incurred. That evening, I drove straight to my parents' house in Oak Park without calling ahead. I found Mom in the kitchen preparing her famous pot roast dinner, Dad in the garage tinkering with his vintage Mustang, and Marcus nowhere to be seen, probably upstairs in his childhood bedroom managing his investment portfolio, which really meant playing video games all day. Mom, I said firmly, standing in the kitchen doorway with my arms crossed. Did you give debt collectors my personal information? The wooden spoon in her hand froze mid-stir. From the garage, I heard the distinct sound of Dad's wrench clattering against the concrete floor. What do you mean? Honey. Her voice pitched unnaturally high, the exact same tone she used when she lied about eating my Halloween candy as a kid. The $50? 000 debt that collectors claim I owe them. They know everything about my life, where I work, where I live, my social security number. This isn't my debt. Mom. Dad emerged from the garage slowly, wiping motor oil off his hands with an old shop rag. Guilt, written clearly across his weathered face. Now hold on there. Son, he started in his familiar patronizing tone. Don't. I snapped, surprising myself with the force of my own voice. They're calling my job. Dad, my boss thinks I'm financially irresponsible. My neighbors are getting visits from collection agents asking about me. This nightmare ends right now. Mom finally set down the wooden spoon and turned to face me directly, tears already forming in her eyes. Jake, sweetheart, they were calling us 20 times every single day. Your poor father couldn't even sleep at night. We just told them you might be able to help sort things out with Marcus's situation. Help sort things out? I laughed bitterly. You told them I was legally responsible for paying the debt. Do you have any idea what you've done? My entire career is at stake. Dad stepped forward, adopting his familiar know-it-all tone that had annoyed me since childhood. Look, son, family helps family through tough times. You've got a steady paycheck and excellent credit. Marcus is just going through some temporary difficulties right now. Temporary difficulties, I exploded, my voice echoing through their small kitchen. This is his 6th temporary difficulty in the past 3 years. The food truck business that failed after 3 months and lost $15. Ling, ling, ling. The cryptocurrency day trading that wiped out Grandma Rose's birthday money. The drop shipping business that never actually shipped a single product. When does this pattern of failure finally end? Marcus has real potential. Mom defended weakly through her tears. This new consulting business could really take off if he just gets through this current rough patch. Where is Marcus right now? I demanded. Looking around the house. Let me guess. Hiding upstairs in his room while I'm forced to clean up his latest mess. The guilty silence that followed confirmed everything I suspected about their family dynamics. That night, I couldn't sleep a single minute. Instead of tossing and turning uselessly, I decided to conduct my own thorough investigation into what was really happening. First, I systematically changed every password I owned, online banking, email accounts, social media profiles, work system logins, everything. Then I began meticulously documenting evidence of the harassment campaign. I recorded every debt collection, phone call, completely legal in Illinois, with one-party consent, took screenshots of every threatening text message, and photographed all the official-looking collection letters that arrived in my mailbox daily. The letters were genuinely impressive, professional corporate letterhead, complex legal terminology, intimidating language about final demands and imminent litigation proceedings. But something about them felt fundamentally wrong to me. I spent my entire weekend researching these collection companies online through every database I could access. Half of them had no legitimate business addresses, operating only through anonymous P.O. boxes registered in Delaware. The other half had terrible Better Business Bureau ratings and hundreds of formal complaints about illegal harassment tactics and fraudulent collection practices. But the real breakthrough came when I accessed Cook County's comprehensive public records database. What I discovered there made my blood boil with pure rage. Marcus had systematically applied for multiple high-risk loans over the past 18 months, 3 separate payday loans with predatory interest rates, 2 large personal loans from sketchy online lenders, and 1 business loan for his completely fictional consulting company that existed only on paper. The total amount of debt he had accumulated, exactly $50. Lambai Sushitsi. Here's the part that made me want to vomit. On every single loan application, he had deliberately listed me as the primary cosigner and emergency contact. Using my complete personal information that he had carefully copied from tax preparation documents, I had helped my parents organize the previous year. My own flesh and blood brother had systematically forged my legal signature on multiple loan documents and stolen my identity to fund his pathetic fantasy businesses. First thing Monday morning, I took a personal day from work and marched straight into the Chicago Police Department headquarters with a thick manila folder full of damning evidence. Officer Maria Gonzalez, a sharp and experienced woman in her mid-40s, carefully reviewed my comprehensive documentation with growing alarm and professional concern. Mr. Mitchell, what you're describing here is textbook identity theft and financial fraud, she said grimly. Examining the forged loan applications I had managed to obtain through legal channels, your brother has committed multiple serious felonies by using your personal information without any form of consent whatsoever. I immediately filed formal police reports for identity theft and fraud, then drove directly to all 3 major credit reporting agencies to dispute every single fraudulent debt listed under my name. I also submitted detailed formal complaints to both the Federal Trade Commission and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau about the systematic harassment campaign being conducted against me. But I wasn't finished fighting back. I hired David Kim, a specialist consumer protection attorney who focused exclusively on debt collection abuse cases. His retainer fee was $2, $500 money. I had been carefully saving for a down payment on a real apartment, but it was absolutely worth every penny for the justice I was about to receive. We're going to completely destroy these collection agencies. Attorney Kim promised confidently during our first consultation meeting. Illegal harassment tactics, blatant violations of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, systematic identity theft. They've broken dozens of federal and state laws. By the time we're finished, they'll be paying you significant damages. That same evening, I made the decision to go completely nuclear on my family's reputation. I opened our family WhatsApp group chat called Mitchell Family Updates, typically filled with mom's recipe photos, dad's fishing trip pictures, and generic birthday wishes for various distant relatives. I carefully typed out a long, detailed message that would change our family dynamics forever. I need every single person in our extended family to know exactly what Marcus and my parents have done to me. They deliberately provided debt collectors with all of my personal information and explicitly told them that I was legally responsible for paying Marcus's $50, 0 inches, completely fraudulent loans. I want to be crystal clear. I never co-signed a single document for anything. Marcus systematically forged my signature on multiple loan applications after stealing my identity information. I am currently being harassed at my workplace, and my professional reputation is being destroyed because of their lies and criminal behavior. I have filed formal police reports for identity theft and fraud with the Chicago Police Department. I attached clear screenshots of threatening text messages, high-resolution photos of the intimidating collection letters, and most damning of all, official copies of the loan applications clearly showing my perfectly forged signature, positioned directly next to Marcus's authentic signature. The family group chat absolutely exploded within minutes of my post, Aunt Jennifer. Oh my God. Jake, is this really happening? Uncle Mike Marcus actually forged your signature? That's a serious crime, Cousin Lisa. This is absolutely horrible. I'm so sorry you're going through this nightmare. Grandma Rose, surprisingly tech-savvy at 82 years old, I am deeply disappointed in all three of you. How could you do something so terrible to Jake within exactly 1 hour of my post? My phone started ringing nonstop with calls from shocked family members. Mom called first, sobbing hysterically into the phone. Jake, how could you embarrass our entire family like this? Everyone is asking us terrible questions. Your Aunt Jennifer actually called me a horrible mother. How could I embarrass you? I shot back with pure fury. You actively participated in identity theft and fraud. You helped destroy my career and reputation. We were just trying to help Marcus get back on his feet. She wailed pathetically. You always fix everyone's problems. We honestly thought you would just handle this situation quietly, like you always do. You thought I would just quietly pay $50,000 in fraudulent debt because you asked me to. While Marcus hides in his childhood bedroom playing video games all day, I hung up on my own mother for the first time in my entire life. And it felt absolutely liberating. The very next morning, I took the most decisive action of my adult life, complete financial separation from my toxic family. I immediately called ComEd Electric Company and had my name completely removed from the electricity bill for my parents' house. I canceled the Xfinity internet service that I had been paying for over 2 years. I removed them entirely from my Netflix, Hulu, and Spotify family subscription plans. I even canceled the AAA roadside assistance membership I had been covering for Dad's vintage Mustang. Most importantly, I permanently stopped the automatic $400 monthly bank transfer I had been sending to help cover their mortgage payments on Grandma Rose's house. When Mom called me the next day, crying hysterically about their electricity being shut off completely, Marcus can pay for it now. After all, he has that successful consulting business you keep bragging about. Right. When Dad sent me frustrated text messages about their Wi-Fi router not working properly, Best Buy's Geek Squad offers professional house calls for just $99. They're very helpful and reliable. For the first time in my entire adult life, their endless problems were no longer my responsibility to solve or my emergencies to handle. 3 weeks later came the ultimate test of my resolve. Dad's 56th birthday celebration. The annual family gathering that had become a sacred tradition over the past 15 years. Every single year, the entire extended family would gather at my parents' modest house for a massive celebration. I had always been the designated tech support specialist, responsible for setting up the complex sound system for Dad's classic rock playlist, troubleshooting whatever electronic devices had mysteriously broken, and helping Mom coordinate the logistical chaos of feeding 30 hungry relatives. This year, I sent a simple but devastating message to our family group chat. I will not be attending Dad's birthday party this year. If anyone wants to know why, please ask my parents and Marcus directly. The responses were immediate and filled with concern, but I steadfastly refused to elaborate any further details. On the actual day of Dad's birthday party, I stayed home in my comfortable apartment, ordered delicious Chinese takeout, and binge-watched Netflix series guilt-free. Throughout the evening, my sympathetic cousin Lisa sent me private updates about the unfolding disaster. Dad's expensive Bluetooth speaker system isn't working, and nobody knows how to fix it. Half the extended family keeps asking where you are and why. You're not here. Marcus finally showed up, but he looks absolutely miserable and won't talk to anyone. Aunt Jennifer just cornered your mom in the kitchen, demanding detailed answers about the debt collection situation. Your mom is crying alone in the bathroom, while guests are asking uncomfortable questions. People are starting to leave early because the atmosphere is so tense and awkward. Final photo Lisa sent me was genuinely heartbreaking. Dad sitting completely alone at the kitchen table, looking confused and hurt, while his 56th birthday party collapsed into social disaster around him. Despite feeling a small pang of sympathy, I didn't cave to the guilt. Their problems were no longer mine to solve, and their social embarrassment was the direct result of their own criminal choices. Over the following month, I watched my family's carefully constructed reputation crumble into complete social ruin. The debt collection agencies, when finally faced with my comprehensive police reports and my attorney's aggressive legal correspondence, were legally forced to conduct thorough investigations into the fraud allegations. They quickly discovered the systematically forged loan applications and immediately redirected all their collection pressure toward Marcus and my enabling parents, who had been fully aware of his criminal scheme from the beginning. Marcus was forced to abandon all his delusional business fantasies and take his first legitimate job in over 5 years, stocking shelves at the local grocery store for $15 per hour. His completely fictional consulting business was publicly revealed as an elaborate fraud with zero real clients or income. My parents, now facing potential legal liability for their active role in the identity theft conspiracy, hired a criminal defense attorney they absolutely could not afford. The mounting legal fees quickly consumed what little savings they had managed to accumulate over decades of frugal living. But the social consequences proved even more devastating than the financial ones. Word about the identity theft scandal spread like wildfire through our extended family network, their longtime church congregation, and their quiet suburban neighborhood. Grandma Rose, still sharp as a razor at 82 years old, publicly expressed her profound disappointment and shame about how they had treated me. My parents were formally uninvited from Thanksgiving dinner at Aunt Jennifer's house, ending a cherished family tradition that had continued unbroken for over 20 years. Their longtime friends at St. Lycan, Mary's Catholic Church, began asking uncomfortable questions and keeping their distance during Sunday services. Even their immediate neighbors started treating them differently after Mrs. Patterson next door learned the shocking truth and shared it throughout their entire residential block. The golden boy had finally fallen from grace permanently, and the reliable son had definitively said enough is enough. 2 full months after Dad's disastrous birthday party, Mom showed up unannounced at my apartment door on a quiet Sunday morning. I watched through my security peephole as she stood nervously in my hallway, holding what appeared to be a homemade apple pie, my absolute favorite dessert since childhood. I opened the door slowly, but made no move to invite her inside my apartment. "Jake, please," she begged desperately, her eyes red and swollen from obvious recent crying. "I made your favorite apple pie from scratch. Can we please just sit down and talk about fixing this horrible situation? Talk about what exactly—" "Mom?" I asked coldly, keeping my voice emotionally neutral. "About putting our family back together. Everything is completely falling apart without you. Grandma Rose refuses to speak to any of us anymore. Your cousins literally crossed the street to avoid us at church. And Marcus—" She paused, her voice breaking with genuine emotion. "Marcus is so deeply depressed that he won't even leave his bedroom except to go to that awful job." "Good," I said simply, without any trace of sympathy in my voice. Her face immediately crumpled with shock and hurt. "That's not like you at all. Jake, you've never been cruel or heartless. You're the one who always helped everyone in the family, who always made everything better when things went wrong. And look where my constant helping got me," I replied with cold logic. "Identity theft, systematic harassment at my workplace, criminal fraud committed against me by my own family members, and a destroyed professional reputation that I'm still trying to rebuild. We'll make this completely right, she pleaded desperately, grasping at any possible solution. We'll pay for all your legal fees, help clear your name with your employer. Do whatever it takes. With what money exactly? I asked pointedly. Dad's monthly disability check that barely covers your basic living expenses, your part-time wages from Whole Foods. You can't even pay your own electric bill without my financial help anymore. She physically flinched as if I had slapped her across the face. Jake, please. I'm begging you. I know we made terrible, inexcusable mistakes. But Marcus is still your brother and we're still your family. Families are supposed to forgive each other and work through problems together. Real families don't systematically commit fraud against each other, I stated firmly, my voice remaining calm and controlled. Real families don't sacrifice one child's entire future to protect another child's criminal behavior. Real families don't enable a 3-2-year-old failure to keep making the same destructive mistakes while forcing someone else to pay all the consequences. I gently took the homemade apple pie from her trembling hands, appreciating the gesture despite everything else. Thank you for making this. Mom, I know you put effort into it, but absolutely nothing has fundamentally changed about this situation. Marcus desperately needs to face the real consequences of his criminal choices. And you and Dad need to completely stop enabling his destructive behavior patterns. I closed the door firmly and listened to her slow, defeated footsteps fade down the hallway, followed by the sound of her old car starting up and driving away into the distance. I spent that entire afternoon eating the delicious apple pie while watching football. And it was absolutely perfect, just like I remembered from childhood. Today, as I sit in my apartment, which feels genuinely spacious now that it's not weighed down by the constant burden of everyone else's endless problems, I'm sipping my morning coffee while watching Chicago's beautiful skyline. Through my clean window, the debt collection harassment campaign stopped completely after my attorney's aggressive legal actions and formal complaints to federal agencies. Marcus was legally forced into structured payment plans with all the legitimate creditors he had defrauded. Every single fraudulent debt was officially removed from my credit report. And my score has actually improved to 798. I haven't spoken a single word to my parents or Marcus since Mom's desperate pie visit 10 months ago. They occasionally send pathetic, manipulative text messages, Dad requesting computer technical support that he could easily Google himself. Mom sharing unwanted recipe photos I never asked for. Marcus sending emotionally manipulative messages about how I completely destroyed our family. I don't respond to any of them. Ever. My extended family has mostly taken my side in this conflict, creating an uncomfortable but necessary divide at family gatherings that I no longer attend. Aunt Jennifer calls me once a month to check on my well-being and usually shares brief updates about my parents' ongoing struggles, the constantly mounting bills, the persistent stress, the way they've both aged dramatically in less than a year. Honestly, I feel completely peaceful for the first time in my adult life. Maybe even genuinely happy. My entire paycheck now goes toward my personal goals and dreams. My problems are exclusively my own, to solve, and absolutely nobody can demand that I sacrifice myself for their benefit ever again. 4 months ago, something absolutely amazing happened at Innovate Tech that I never could have expected. My boss, Mr. Thompson, called me into his private office on a Tuesday morning. I initially assumed it was a delayed conversation about those debt collection calls from earlier in the year. Instead, he offered me an immediate promotion to senior developer with a substantial $25,000 annual salary increase. Jake, your technical work has been consistently excellent since you started here. But what truly impressed me the most was how professionally you handled that difficult personal situation earlier this year. He explained thoughtfully. You dealt with it through proper legal channels, maintained complete discretion at work, and never let it affect your job performance. That's exactly the kind of character and integrity we want in our leadership positions. I accepted the promotion immediately without any hesitation. With my significantly improved salary, I'm actively looking at much better apartments in safer neighborhoods, maybe even a genuine one-bedroom place with actually separate rooms for sleeping and working. I've started dating again seriously for the first time in years. Joined an active hiking club that explores nature trails every weekend, and discovered the joy of spending peaceful Saturday mornings on mountain paths instead of fixing other people's endless technical problems. My coworker Sarah introduced me to her younger sister Emma 3 months ago, and we've been on 8 wonderful dates so far. When Emma naturally asked about my family background during our 4th date, I gave her the completely honest answer. We're not close anymore due to some serious trust violations and financial fraud issues. She didn't pry for uncomfortable details or judge me for the situation, which I found refreshing and attractive. Healthy, emotionally mature people naturally respect personal boundaries, something I'm still learning to appreciate and recognize. People constantly preach about the supposedly sacred importance of family loyalty, unconditional forgiveness, and giving endless second chances, but they very rarely discuss what happens when family relationships become a primary source of harm, exploitation, and abuse rather than support and love. My parents didn't simply make innocent mistakes or errors in judgment. They actively and deliberately chose to sacrifice my financial stability, professional reputation, and mental health in order to protect their favorite child from facing any consequences. They systematically enabled Marcus's fraudulent criminal behavior for years, then tried to force me to pay all the prices for his choices. That's not love, support, or healthy family dynamics. That's calculated exploitation and abuse that happens to involve people with genetic connections. Marcus didn't just fail at various business ventures like a normal person. He methodically committed multiple serious felonies by stealing my identity and forging legal documents. He knew exactly what he was doing throughout the entire process and simply didn't care about the devastating consequences I would be forced to face. The most difficult lesson I've had to learn is that sometimes the most genuinely loving thing you can do both for yourself and, ironically, for the other people involved is to walk away completely and permanently. To stop enabling destructive behavior patterns by always being the reliable solution. To force people to face the natural, logical consequences of their own choices and actions. My parents are struggling significantly with financial problems now, and a small part of me occasionally feels guilty about their situation. But they're struggling directly with the results of their own decisions and criminal actions, not with anything I did to them. Without my monthly $400 contributions and bill payments, they're finally forced to live within their actual means or find new legitimate sources of income. This is called natural consequences, and it's something they should have experienced decades ago. Marcus, at 32 years old, is working a minimum wage retail job and living in his childhood bedroom with his parents. It's humiliating and embarrassing for someone his age. But that's exactly what he needed to experience. For the first time in his entire adult life, he's facing real, tangible consequences for his actions, instead of having family members rescue him from every failure. Some extended family members and old friends have suggested that I'm being too harsh or holding permanent grudges against them. But this situation isn't about punishment or revenge. It's about establishing and maintaining healthy boundaries for my own well-being. I absolutely refuse to be anyone's emergency ATM machine, free tech support department, or convenient scapegoat ever again. That decision is final and non-negotiable. When acquaintances or coworkers learn that I don't maintain contact with my biological family, they usually ask the same predictable questions. Don't you miss them at all? I miss the family. I thought I had the one that would never sacrifice me to save someone else, that would treat me with basic respect and honesty. But that family never actually existed outside of my naive imagination. What I definitely don't miss is the constant anxiety, the feeling of being used and exploited, and the knowledge that my kindness was being systematically weaponized against me. What if there's a serious family emergency? They have each other, other extended family members, neighbors, and professional emergency services. My physical presence isn't required for them to function as independent adults or handle crisis situations. Don't you want to reconcile with them eventually? Only if they take complete responsibility for their criminal actions. Make genuine amends that go beyond empty words and demonstrate lasting, fundamental changes in their behavior patterns over years, not months. Superficial apologies and promises to do better next time aren't nearly enough anymore. Isn't family more important than money? This situation was never about money or financial disagreements. This was about trust, respect, honesty, and basic human decency. They systematically violated all of those fundamental principles that healthy relationships require. If you're reading this story and recognizing similar destructive patterns in your own family relationships, please know that you're not crazy, selfish, or unreasonable for wanting better treatment from the people who are supposed to love you most. Family members who consistently take advantage of your kindness, who sacrifice your well-being for someone else's benefit, who refuse to respect reasonable boundaries, who commit crimes against you. They're showing you their true character through their actions. Believe what they show you, not what they claim to feel about you. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your life, your financial resources, or your peace of mind just because you happen to share some DNA. Biological connection doesn't grant automatic forgiveness, rights, or exemption from basic standards of human decency. Setting firm boundaries isn't cruel or heartless. It's absolutely necessary for your mental health and personal development. Walking away from toxic family dynamics isn't giving up on love. It's choosing to love yourself enough to demand respectful treatment. Beyond the obvious benefits of dramatically reduced stress and complete financial freedom, going no contact has taught me valuable lessons about myself and all my relationships. I've learned to recognize manipulation tactics immediately in any relationship, whether romantic, professional, or social. I no longer feel guilty or selfish for saying no to unreasonable requests or demands. I've discovered that emotionally healthy people actually appreciate and respect clear boundaries rather than constantly testing and violating them. My friendships have grown much deeper and more meaningful because I'm no longer constantly distracted by family drama and crisis management. My work performance improved dramatically once I wasn't fielding emergency calls and harassment during office hours. My mental health is genuinely better than it's been since early childhood. Most surprisingly, I've learned that I actually enjoy helping other people when it's appreciated, appropriately reciprocated, and not demanded or expected as some kind of obligation. I volunteer every weekend at a local adult literacy program, teaching adults to read and write. And it's incredibly fulfilling because the recipients are genuinely grateful and working hard to improve their life situations. The difference between helping someone who truly appreciates your efforts versus enabling someone who simply expects and demands your help is like night and day. At 30 years old, I'm finally living the life I actually want, rather than the life others expected me to provide for them. I'm building relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection, not guilt and family obligation. Emma and I have been seriously discussing moving in together, which feels exciting and natural, rather than stressful. She's financially responsible, emotionally mature, and maintains healthy relationships with her own family members. All green flags I now recognize as absolutely essential qualities. We talk regularly about future plans, buying a house together, traveling to Europe next summer, possibly having children in a few years. These are normal, healthy relationship discussions that I never had time for when I was constantly managing other people's crises and emergencies. The idea of creating my own family, one built on genuine love, mutual respect, and equal support, rather than guilt manipulation and financial obligation, feels revolutionary after growing up surrounded by such dysfunction. If someone had told me 12 months ago that I would be significantly happier living without my biological family in my life, I would have called them heartless and cruel. Family was supposed to be everything. Right, that's what society teaches us from birth. But now I understand that real family isn't automatically defined by genetics or legal relationships. It's defined by how people consistently choose to treat each other over time. My genuine family consists of friends who celebrate my boundaries and personal growth, colleagues who respect my professionalism and integrity, and the woman I'm building a healthy, balanced relationship with based on equality. These people celebrate my successes without jealousy or resentment, offer help without manipulative strings attached, and respect my autonomy as an independent adult. They have never stolen my identity, sacrificed my reputation for someone else's benefit, or demanded that I financially bankrupt myself to solve their problems. That's what authentic family relationships actually look like. As for my biological relatives, I genuinely hope they eventually figure out their lives and find sustainable happiness, but their personal journey is no longer my responsibility to manage. Their problems are no longer my emergencies to solve, and their guilt trips and manipulation tactics have absolutely zero power over me anymore. I'm 30 years old, professionally successful, personally fulfilled, financially secure, and completely free from the toxic dynamics that once defined and controlled my entire existence. Honestly, it feels absolutely incredible, and I wouldn't change a single thing about my decision to prioritize my own well-being. If this story resonates with your own experiences and you're dealing with similar toxic family issues, please consider seeking professional help from a qualified therapist or joining a support group for people with family trauma. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care, not exploitation and manipulation. Your mental health and personal well-being matter more than anyone else's expectations about family obligations. Remember this crucial truth. You cannot and should not set yourself on fire just to keep other people warm. Story 2. And if you thought that was the end of the drama, wait until story 2. A 8-year-old father is labeled an extra mouth to feed by his daughter-in-law and tries to kick him out of the house, until one decision of his turns the tables. I was evicted by my daughter-in-law. An additional mouth to feed is him. My kid nodded as she said, "The action I took, everything changed after that." Hey Reddit, I need to vent, but I'm definitely too old for this app. This is how my gold-digging daughter-in-law misjudged me and later felt bad about it. About a year ago, I discovered that raising a nice kid is really difficult when he marries a manipulative witch. My name is Jacob, and I am 68 years old. Peter, Centrisu, is built like his father, but he has a deadly flaw, his mother's trusting heart. Isabella and I were married for 42 years, during which time I saw this intelligent lady gradually lose my face due to Alzheimer's, but since it made her happy, I remained right there and gave her a bath, fed her, and read her the same romance book 17 times. 3 months after Peter and Fiona were married, Isabella passed away. Immediately after the burial, I began to see changes in my son that were emblazoned with Fiona's fingerprints. Peter began calling with concerns throughout the course of the next 3 months. I consented to temporarily move in 6 months following Isabella's death. A few weeks before to it, there was a hospital scare. You see, Peter was constantly on his own. The child moved out at the age of 22, started his own IT business, and never sought for money until he was in dire need. However, 3 months after we buried Isabella, I start receiving strange calls from him, inquiring about my long-term goals and the financial effects of aging in place. When Peter arrived to assist Isabella in organizing her belongings using a checklist, it was the first warning sign. An actual written spreadsheet with categories: emotional worth, risale possibilities, storage needs, and disposal procedure is used instead of a talk about what should be kept. Did you create this? I held out the document and asked. He flushed. Fiona reasoned that it would keep us organized. She is adept at this kind of work. I realized then, all of a sudden, he is worried about my old security system, my property taxes, and whether or not I should combine my bank accounts. Every exchange seemed staged. and he would get defensive if I resisted. I had a cardiac episode, which was the tipping point. I felt dizzy as my heart skipped beats, causing me to collapse in my kitchen. After hearing the accident, Mrs. Miller, who lived next door, phoned for an ambulance. I was okay after making some minor medication modifications. However, Peter arrived to the hospital with genuine fear and asked the physicians honest questions. Then, as if she were at a board meeting, Fiona entered with a leather portfolio. She questioned Peter. "How is he? Not me." "I'm fine," I said. Fiona gave me a courteous nod before turning back to Peter, saying, "Just some medication issues. While we're all here, we should probably talk about the next steps. What comes next? In 2 hours, I was going to be released." At that point, she opened the portfolio and began arranging brochures for senior companion services, food delivery services, and medical alert systems. Completely audacious and thoroughly studied. "I'm not an invalid, Fiona, but I do appreciate your compassion." I went down. "I understand. But that's precisely why we can't overlook this. What if Mrs. Had Miller not been present, I could see the turmoil in Peter's eyes, even though he was nodding along. In addition to his wife's practicality, his father was being seen as an issue that needed to be resolved. We've been discussing a few things, and perhaps it's time to consider some adjustments. I saw that this lady had been playing a longer game than I had realized when I looked at my son, the child I had taught to drive stick shift, fish, and change his own oil. I inquired, "What kind of changes at that point?" She produced the Heavy Guns pamphlets for assisted living, information on 5 facilities within an hour's drive from their home, pricing evaluations, and wait lists. Peter was examining the brochures as if he had never seen them before. And she had completed her assignment. Here's what really got me. However, she had meticulously planned out my funds, everything my property worth, savings, social security, and pension. She was well aware of my financial situation and how long I could afford it. "How did you find out about this?" She tightened her grin. Peter gave the essential details. We wanted to ensure that any choices were practical. Peter seemed humiliated when I glanced at him. I simply wanted to know what my alternatives were. "Dad, so, without my consent, you provided your wife my private financial information." The quiet was overwhelming. He opened his mouth to speak, but Fiona interrupted. "Jacob, we're family. Isn't Peter simply watching out for you? The sort of family that has a great business strategy and turns up for your medical emergency." I realized then that this was not your typical in-law drama. Fiona was systematically trying to shift my role from parent to responsibility, and she was doing it with the weapon of my son's love for me. She was unaware, however, that this elderly guy had been coping with manipulators since before she was even born. And I was going to remind everyone who precisely was responsible for raising the child she was attempting to control. I made the worst decision of my life 6 months after Isabella passed away. I consented to live with them for the time being while we looked into long-term alternatives. Fiona's persistent worry over my living alone had eventually wore Peter down, and Peter's sincere concern, cloaked in his wife's talking points, had worn me down. For 2 individuals who prioritized aesthetics above human comfort, their apartment felt like they were living inside a Pinterest board. They used my bedroom as a home office, the office where you'll be staying, not your room, or the extra room. I had to work around her territorial marks since her file cabinets and yoga equipment stayed precisely where they were. "We're so glad you're here." And the first week was all phony grins. No sense. However, the mask began to come off by week 2. The shower schedule was the first step. A laminated calendar with the best times for everyone to use the facilities was put up by Fiona. I was scheduled from 5:30 to 6:00 A. M. Next came the guidelines for the kitchen. The coffee was excellent. Every morning. De fresh. But just for 2 individuals. After their breakfast dishes were cleared, I had to make my own coffee if I wanted it. After 7:00 a.m., my name was written on the label of my meal. But she was a superb manipulator. She never voiced her complaints out loud. Rather, she stood in the corridor after my shower and took observations. Fascinating. Once again, during my turn, the hot water ran out. Thinking he was helpful, Peter would start pressing me to be more resource conscious after hearing these remarks. The 3rd week was the tipping moment. As she got home from work, I was watching the news. For a whole minute, she stood in the doorway, gazing at me as if I were seated on her throne. I know you're at ease, Jacob. But when we come home, Peter and I normally unwind together. Perhaps your room has something to offer. My chamber, as if I were a teenager. I turned to face Peter, who stood glumly behind his wife. You're cool with it, son. Peter glanced at me and then at Fiona. Maybe just tonight. Dad? I then proceeded to my room, where I could hear their conversation over the thin walls. Without speaking, Fiona was explaining to Peter everything I had done, including using too much cream cheese, leaving water stains on the mirror, and switching her yoga mat 6 inches to charge my phone. He's having trouble adapting to structure. Building a case, Fiona added. Maybe we need another conversation about expectations. Every little annoyance was being listed as proof that I was an unmanageable burden. However, that game is playable by 2. I began working on my own paperwork the next morning. I purchased a notebook and started documenting Fiona's actions with the same clinical objectivity she used to me. I would act like the businessman I had been for 40 years if she wanted to handle this like a business deal. Fiona's yoga class at 5 in the morning. Until fem femofura a.m. Loud enough music to rouse the dead. Fiona and her mother's phone conversations. 6:30:07:15 p.m. At my door, talking about my challenging transition. Her food preparation. Complex. Pricey ingredients that I was unable to consume because of my blood pressure medicine. And then passive-aggressive remarks. However, it wasn't until I saw her taking pictures of my belongings that I realized the truth. She was snapping photos of my reading glasses on the side table, the newspaper folded wrongly, and my coffee cup in the sink when I stepped into the kitchen. What are you doing? Oh. She was surprised. I'm only recording organizational concepts for our Instagram space optimization before and after photos. Correct. Peter seemed to have been struck by a vehicle when he returned home that evening. Fiona started her daily report right away. But I was prepared. I cut you off. Peter, can I speak with you by myself? Fiona jerked her head in my direction. Is everything all right? It's all right. I just want to go outside and catch up with my son, I said. Despite his anxious appearance, Peter accompanied me out onto their little balcony. We were able to get some peace from the city sounds, and my son's shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. How are you doing? I inquired. Dad, I'm all right. Just getting used to everything. Your wife seems to be under stress. About 6 distinct looks passed over his face before fatigue took over. As you can see, Fiona is just a planner. Having you here has been a change for all of us. And she liked things to be organized. Did she tell you that don't do that? Dad, this has nothing to do with Fiona. Everyone is attempting to make this work. Once again, there it was. It was impossible for my son to discuss his own emotions without including his wife's viewpoint. When was the last time you made a choice without first talking to her? Peter. He flushed. It's unfair. Making choices together is a key component of marriage. I'm not referring to purchasing a home. I'm referring to the question of whether you may speak with your father without his consent. He looked at me for a while, though accepting that meant admitting his wife wasn't who he believed her to be. He was beginning to see that, Dad, she's been kind to me. She organizes our funds, plans everything, and takes care of everything. Without her, I'm not sure how I'd manage. You would continue to live your life as you did for the first 32 years. She opened the sliding door at that moment. Is everything all right out here? You two seem very solemn. Peter went straight into husband mode. Just chatting. We're all right. Excellent. Fiona grinned but had icy eyes. Dinner is prepared. Peter, I prepared that salmon meal you like. She did. Of course. It was difficult for my kid to understand how she was separating him from his family, since she was immediately reminding him of all the ways she looked after him. She placed a hand on Peter's arm and muttered something that caused him to nod rapidly as we made our way back inside. Then she gave me the same face I had seen when she brought her damn portfolio to the hospital. I realized at that point that civil discussions and family gatherings would not be the end of things. The day I moved in, this lady started war on me. And she had been winning every conflict by dominating the field. However, strategy, not combat, is what wins wars. Fiona really began to take over in the second month. She started a psychological pressure campaign called Thermostat Wars after realizing that Peter would think poorly of her if she confronted him directly. She reprimanded any alteration and locked it at 68. While I was watching TV, she began to invite others around. Gatherings for her marketing company's business networking. 20 or so colleagues are using their living room as a coffee shop, chatting about synergy while I sat like mismatched furniture in my corner. Fiona would say, "Sorry, Jacob," to the group. The worst thing was how she handled Peter's connection with me. My father-in-law is now residing with us while we work out his long-term care issue. After she started setting up date nights during the times Peter and I usually spoke, my son became too busy for coffee on Saturday morning, and Sunday phone calls were disrupted due to her unexpected day trips. I decided to try my hand at spying on her by setting up subtle traps. Every personal detail I shared was being filtered and turned into evidence that I couldn't be trusted. And within days, Fiona was asking Peter about my new business ventures and whether I was making risky financial decisions. I would leave my notebook open to pages about fictional property management investments that were detailed enough to look real. The tipping point was when Frank, who had been my friend for 20 years and my construction supervisor for 15 years, showed up unexpectedly on a Wednesday night. Jacob was a good guy, straight shooter. And when Peter opened the door, Frank boomed, "I thought I'd stop by and see how you're settling in." Peter appeared anxious. Frank walked past Peter and said, "Dad didn't mention you were coming by. Didn't know I needed permission to visit an old friend." Fiona came out of the kitchen with that troublesome, tight smile. "Frank." "Right, I'm Fiona." I could see him assessing her. So he shook her hand and said, "Nice place you got here." As he looked around, "We prefer to keep things organized." Fiona said, "Coffee." He leaned forward and said, "This place seems like a doctor's office." Yeah. Fiona was in the kitchen. "How are you doing? Making ends meet, adapting," he nodded, knowing precisely what I was becoming used to. Fiona sat down and started questioning right away as she brought back water. "So, Frank, how long have you known Jacob? What kind of work did you two accomplish? Are you retired?" Frank gave a kind response. But I could see he was becoming irritated. Frank lost patience when Fiona began inquiring about his long-term care requirements and support network. "I'm 66. Lady, I have 2 children who really like my company, and I own 3 rental houses. I believe I'm managed rather nicely." Her grin wavered. I didn't intend to suggest. Of course. And one of the brightest individuals I know is Jacob. He raised a fine kid, managed crews for 30 years, and patiently cared for his wife throughout her Alzheimer's disease. He will ask for aid if he needs it. Maybe let the guy live his life till then? The quiet was overwhelming. Peter seemed to want to scuttle under the furnishings. 6 distinct colors of crimson flashed over Fiona's face. Fiona said, "We're just concerned about your safety." Frank said directly, "Are you worried about his safety or his bank account?" At last, Peter raised his voice. I nodded, and Frank stared at me. "Frank, I think you should go. There's no use in making Peter's situation worse." "Yes, Jacob, this weekend. Let's have lunch together. A place where we can really get good coffee." The condo's temperature fell by 20 degrees after Frank departed. I could hear them fighting through the walls that night. Fiona insisted that Peter establish limits with me about unsuitable visitors. She refused to listen to Peter's explanation that Frank was only being protective. She said, "Your father is inciting people to oppose me. Are you blind to what he's doing?" "Perhaps," Peter murmured softly. "Frank has a point. Perhaps we're exerting too much control." Fiona raised the pitch of her voice. 6 months ago, Peter, your father almost had a heart attack. He is living in an excessively large home, has no support structure, and is taking risks. There, we're acting responsibly. It was her whole plan. I now understood precisely what frightened her: losing command of the story. The pressure had reached critical mass 3 months into my stay. Between his worry about me and his wife's demands, Peter seemed to have not slept well in weeks. Fiona had intensified her campaign to the extent of North Korean propaganda. On a Tuesday, Fiona's announcement that a family financial planning meeting was necessary was the last straw. She had a 3-ring binder with the title Jacob Mackenzie Long-Term Care Strategic Planning, color-coded charts, printed slides, and a prepared presentation. Good grief. As we sat at their glass dining table, Peter seemed to be on his way to be executed. Fiona took her binder out. The present living arrangement was always transitory. As we have mentioned, Fiona started as we considered our choices. We are prepared to make firm judgments for the next stage now that we have had 3 months to evaluate Jacob's requirements and talents. She turned to her first chart, which was a financial analysis that included all of my assets, costs, and income. Not approximations. Precise numbers. "How did you arrive at these figures?" Fiona grinned. "I conducted research to fill up the holes in the fundamental framework that Peter gave. The good news is that you have enough money to pay for alternatives for high-quality treatment." She turned to the matrix of facility comparisons. 5 distinct assisted living facilities, each rated for meals, medical care, social activities, and expenses. Peter was nodding in agreement as if this made sense. Fiona pulled out beautiful pamphlets to reveal that Golden Sunset Manor had received the highest rating in our assessment. Outstanding medical facilities with a staff-to-resident ratio of 3:1. Unit for memory care. She was already making plans for my cognitive decline, even though I didn't have any memory issues. The $4, $200 monthly fee covers activities, cleaning, food, and medication administration. Depending on the state of the market, Jacob can afford this for 8 to 12 years based on his holdings. At last, Peter raised his voice. "Don't you think that before we make any suggestions, Fiona, we should talk to Dad about this? We're talking to him about it. That is the purpose of this gathering. I mean, rather than telling him what we believe is best, shouldn't we ask him what he wants?" She tightened her grin. What people desire and what's best for them aren't always the same thing. "Peter, even though Jacob may choose to remain in his home, it is not always secure. What happens if I decide not to visit Golden Sunset Manor?" She turned to a new page. "These are 4 options, each with varying features and costs. This weekend, we are able to see them all." And her patience was becoming thin if she didn't want assisted living at all. "I know this is tough, Jacob, but we must be practical. You're almost 70. You have a history of health problems. And as we age, it is harder to preserve our independence. My medical history includes blood pressure medicine, reading glasses, a heart attack that needed emergency care, severe arthritis that impairs movement, and balance problems that led to your fall. She listed and used every little health concern to bolster her claim that I was incapable of running my own life. Between us, Peter was glancing. Perhaps we might investigate senior living facilities or in-home care choices where Dad could live independently with medical assistance. She lost her mask. We've been through this before. Peter, in-home care is quite costly and difficult to oversee. Then she revealed the secret. Fiona went on, her tone becoming more clinical. Look, this whole thing just isn't working out long term. Peter needs a dedicated home office for his job. And to be honest, having another mouth to feed is straining our finances in ways we weren't prepared for. Quiet. The remark struck like a blow to the body. Peter's head jerked in his wife's direction, as if she had declared her intention to join ISIS. When he realized what his wife had just named his father, the color left his cheeks. Peter said slowly, Fiona, just what did you say? We decided to be open and honest about the financial implications. Peter, your father can take hearing the truth. He is an adult. The reality I spoke quietly. But I was planning out just how I was going to ruin this woman's life. And what is that truth, Peter? I'm referring to actual life. It costs money to have someone else here. Groceries, utilities, and flat wear and tear. In addition, we are no longer able to utilize our office. Everything adds up. It just isn't functioning. Peter's voice became louder as he said, Fiona, do you mean to say that my dad is a financial burden, Peter? I'm speaking about reality. It's time to make those decisions. We've given Jacob temporary accommodation while he worked out his next course of action. She took out other documents. My personal information is already on the Golden Sunset Manor's admittance papers. Financial authorization documents that provide Peter authority to make choices about my health care. A living will template that is tailored for effective management of end-of-life care. Without my signature, none of it had any significance. She delivered blank POA divided by living will templates and pre-filled admittance documents, with a checkbox for my signature. Since the day I moved in, this lady had been organizing my institutional storage, perhaps since Isabella's passing. However, she was unaware that since she was in nappies, her elderly dad had been coping with individuals just like her. My intention was to teach her a master lesson on the consequences of mistaking patience for weakness. I said, Fiona, and got up from the table. Thank you. This was very informative. With optimism in her voice, she said, So, you'll consider our recommendations? Oh, sure. I'll do more than consider them. I grinned. Fiona smiled. But Peter was perplexed. She believed she had triumphed. The unfortunate lady was unaware that the fight was just beginning. I woke up at 5 a.m, the day after Fiona's presentation from hell, and began phoning people. This 8-year-old additional mouth to feed has been managing challenging circumstances since before his daughter-in-law learnt to walk. So it's time to remind everyone of that. Frank took the first call and picked up on the second ring. Is everything okay? Jacob, do you recall the discussion you had with Frank on rental properties and property management? I'm prepared for that conversation. Oh, may God. What was different, I could hear his anger growing with each detail as I played him the 5-minute clip of Fiona's strategic planning meeting. Frank snarled at the cunning little snake. Hasn't she been organizing this from the beginning? Oh, it improves. She has already completed the nursing home's admissions papers. Had my funds been meticulously planned out without my consent? Good grief. What can I do for you? A home and workplace where I am treated like a person. Frank quickly had a 1-bedroom flat available, The property manager position was still available, the building was good, and the neighborhood was nice. Real duties, part-time employment, and sufficient income to augment my pension while keeping me occupied and productive. When would you want to see it? This afternoon. Are you able to come get me? Absolutely. The second call was to my attorney, Jim Whitman. Jim understood my financial condition better than anybody, had managed Isabella's inheritance, and had no tolerance for family manipulation. Jim, I have to make some significant revisions to my will before the end of this week. What changes those who accuse their father-in-law of being a mouthpiece are not allowed to live off of his wealth? A long silence. Are you certain about this? Jacob. Sometimes. Choices on estate planning are made in a fit of rage. Yes. I'm positive. Carl at the bank where I had maintained my accounts for 30 years was the recipient of the third call. I need you to be honest with me. Carl, have there been inquiries about my accounts? I probably shouldn't. Jacob, my financial information is in the hands of someone who shouldn't be there. I must know whether there has been a violation of privacy. A sigh followed by silence. Your son and his wife arrived around 6 months ago. She spoke for the most part and said that they were assisting you in handling your affairs. She asked for account balances, transaction history, and comprehensive records over the last 2 years. And you shared this knowledge with her. The request form was signed by Peter. Your emergency contact is him. You had authorized the review, she said. She did. Of course. Carl, please update Peter's emergency contact status to notification only and provide me with new account numbers and access credentials. No information may be accessed without my consent. 6 months ago, Peter signed an information release. I canceled it, replaced every account number, and put him to notification only, no entry without my consent in writing. By 300 p.m. Frank knocked on the door with vehicle keys and a snarly smile. Are you prepared for the great tour? I picked up my notepad and jacket. What does true independence look like? Let's go see. Fiona emerged quickly, sporting her phony grin. Where are you going? Jacob. I suggested that we go over the brochures for assisted living in the afternoon. Plans changed. Fiona. Frank is presenting me with some alternatives that could be more appropriate. Her grin wavered. What possibilities are there? Options for independent living, for self-sufficient individuals. Frank showed me the ideal flat. It's tidy, cozy, and surrounded by good people. When Mrs. Wang from next door learnt that someone new would be coming in, she had previously prepared additional soup. What time would you want to move in this weekend? Fiona was pacing like a caged animal, and Peter had arrived home early when I returned to the apartment. Where were you? Dead Peter inquired. You went looking at flats with Frank. According to Fiona. Fiona's face became white. Apartments. We decided that you would look at assisted living facilities. Jacob. No. You made the decision that I would take them into account. I never consented to anything. Peter glanced between us, obviously attempting to take in the situation. Are you certain you're prepared to live alone once again? Dad, after all. What happened, Peter? What happened was that I became lightheaded from my medicine and collapsed in my kitchen. Institutionalizing someone is not justified by that. Quiet. Are you aware of what I discovered today? Living in my own home, or being put in a sterile facility where they handle my medicine and keep an eye on my toilet breaks, are both viable possibilities. Peter took a seat. I'm really perplexed. Dad, you seemed to be comfortable looking at our ideas yesterday. I was still attempting to make this work yesterday. I came to the realization today that certain things are unfixable. Fiona was rapidly losing control. This is crazy. You're almost 70. Your health issues are causing you to make irrational judgments, out of wounded sentiments rather than realistic considerations. I took out my notebook at that point and turned to the pages where I had been recording everything. Over the last 30 days, Fiona, you have arranged family activities to keep me from seeing Peter. Taken pictures of my personal belongings to show that they are messy, looked up my financial information without my consent, and eavesdropped on my private conversations to use against me. Peter's jaw dropped. What are you talking about? Dad. From my notes, I read him a couple straight phrases along with the times and dates. Additionally, your wife provided me with a detailed plan for my institutionalization yesterday, complete with admittance papers she had previously completed without my knowledge and financial estimates for my estimated time of death. Peter gazed at Fiona as if he had never seen her before. Is this true? Peter discovered that every Saturday coffee date with me had been automatically banned for a few times when he looked at our shared Google Calendar that evening. He then discovered an email in which Fiona had sent my personal information to 2 institutions in order to get a position. The switch was flicked by that. Peter, your father is twisting the situation to make me appear like the villain. However, the difficult choices you were too emotional to make had to be made by someone else. Calling my father an additional mouth to feed is one example of a difficult choice. For example, acknowledging that our marriage and future cannot be sustained by continuously supporting another adult. Her true worry was there. Bringing out my phone, I continued, talking about financial sustainability. I spent some time today analyzing my own long-term financial plans. She stared at my phone as if it were a weapon. This afternoon, I made some important adjustments to my will over the phone with my lawyer. The quiet was overwhelming. Fiona looked like she was in complete terror. What kind of changes? She inquired in a carefully modulated voice. The kind where people who see their father-in-law as an extra mouth to feed don't get to retire on his money. What follows? It was lovely. Peter filed for divorce 6 weeks later. Yes. The child has grown a spine at last. It was more fulfilling than I had anticipated to see Fiona's well-planned life fall apart. The lady who had been controlling my kid for months learnt what happens when the mask is removed. Fiona began turning up to my flat complex, which was the first indication that she was losing it. She would approach other residents in the lobby and inquire about my mental health, if I seemed confused, and whether I was taking my prescriptions as prescribed. My unofficial building grandma, Mrs. Wang, quickly put an end to the chaos. Jacob is smarter than most individuals half his age. Young woman. He repairs stuff around the building, makes excellent coffee, and assists me with my computer. Perhaps take a peek in the mirror if you're concerned about someone's mental health. However, Fiona was just beginning. She started phoning Peter's friends, his coworkers, anybody who'd listen, alleging I was a manipulative old guy who was wrecking her marriage out of spite. She went on to say that I was envious of their bond and found it infuriating that Peter had chosen her over his father. The issue with the tale was that everyone who knew Peter well could see the damage that Fiona's care had caused. He seemed to have aged 5 years and 6 months. According to his coworkers, according to his pals, he had grown apprehensive and unsure. Every Saturday, Peter began to visit my flat for our long-standing custom of grilling hamburgers and discussing everything except his failing marriage. 3 weeks passed before he was prepared to acknowledge what he had been going through. He looked at his bottle and said, "Dad, I don't know how I let it get so bad." Fiona persuaded me that taking care of yourself and controlling your life were synonymous. The disarray of the divorce processes demonstrated just how deeply she was manipulating me. Son, there's a difference between being concerned and being controlling. I keep thinking about all the times she spoke for me, made decisions for me. When did I stop being able to think for myself? She had been keeping tabs on Peter's expenditures, restricting his social interactions, and progressively removing him from anybody who would challenge her authority. When her lawyer demanded half of everything, including Peter's future inheritance, from me, it became clear that this had always been about money. Her lawyer actually argued that she deserved compensation for the emotional labor of caring for me, and that my decision to change my will constituted elder abuse designed to punish her for being a responsible daughter-in-law. Jim, a 40-year veteran of the legal profession, told the court that he had never seen an attempt to assert inheritance rights for a living, mentally competent individual. But the real fun came when she began her public collapse. She made social media profiles with the goal of bringing attention to the reality of older men who are manipulative and ruin families. She sent pictures of my apartment complex along with remarks about elderly people who neglect their duties. That was the first thing Frank discovered. And he phoned me, laughing so hard he could not talk. "You must see this. Jacob." According to her posts, "You indoctrinated Peter to make herself the target of my psychological warfare effort." She had completely changed the tale. She said that I moved in with them purposely to ruin their marriage, altered my will as the ultimate act of narcissistic retaliation, and purposefully had a heart attack to get sympathy. But here is when she became foolish, due to her desperation. She provided enough precise information in her article to allow for legal action. She mentioned our apartment complex, stated Peter's place of employment, and made defamatory remarks regarding my mental health. When I showed it to Jim, he was nearly rubbing his hands together. "She has given us what we need for a defamation claim and a restraining order." Jacob. This woman's campaign of harassment has been recorded. At the hearing for the restraining order, Fiona finally revealed her true self to the world. She arrived with a folder full of evidence, including screenshots of Peter visiting my apartment, which showed that I was controlling him, pictures of me at the grocery store, which showed that I was stalking her, and what she claimed to be medical records, which were actually notes she had taken from my refrigerator and discharge instructions that Peter had sent her. She asserted that she had the right to defend herself against a dangerous person when the court questioned how she had acquired them. The court immediately issued a temporary restraining order, but the ultimate collapse had still to occur. "Ma'am," the judge remarked, "you're describing normal activities. What exactly are you afraid of?" She arrived to my flat complex the night following the hearing, yelling and inebriated. For hours, she had been sitting in her vehicle trying to get the bravery to face me head-on. Fiona shouted from the parking lot. "Where is he?" I heard the noise while cooking supper on my balcony. "Where's the old bastard who destroyed my life?" I asked myself. Peter was also present. We had begun hosting Saturday barbecues, which served as a reminder to each of us of what typical family dynamics were like. "Come on down here. Jacob, you believe you're quite intelligent." Peter let out a groan and made his way to the door. But I stopped him. "Let me take care of this." Fiona was yelling at the building like she was trying out for a reality show as I went down to the parking lot. "She seemed to be your cunning creation." When Fiona spotted me, she shouted, "My own spouse turned against me because of you. Everything I labored for was ruined by you. You're breaking a restraining order. Fiona, you must go. Get rid of the restraining order. Do you believe that legal documents will allow you to hide? You made everyone believe I'm the crazy one. Ruined my marriage. And took away my future." There was a throng. This breakdown is being recorded by neighbors, bystanders, and those with phones out. Peter's gloomy face materialized at my shoulder. "Go home." Fiona. House. Now she was weeping. Her face was dripping with mascara. "I no longer have a house. Your beloved father ensured that." "No," Peter answered in a firm voice. "When you treated my father like trash and attempted to force me to choose between him and my wife, you wrecked our house." "Fiona, that didn't turn me against you. When you revealed your true nature to me, you did that yourself." She really lost it at that point. She began yelling about attorneys, litigation, and my commitment. She called me every derogatory term in the book, tossed her pocketbook at Peter, and reacted angrily when Mrs. Wang attempted to comfort her. The 4-year-old lady was pushed to the ground by Fiona. A huge error. I calmly responded, "That's assault," and took out my phone. Additionally, I have around 20 witnesses. 15 minutes later, the police showed up. When they placed Fiona in handcuffs, she continued to yell about her rights and how she was the victim. She gave me a hateful glare through the glass as they put her into the police vehicle. I said, "Yeah, this isn't over. You, son of a witch. She just broke the Roro. It really is." Additionally, the DA made a plea after she pushed Mrs. In. Wang. 1 year of probation, 5 months of suspension, 30 days in county, and required counseling. We've had the greatest connection since he was a child. And that's still the case 2 years later. Sarah, his new girlfriend, is really pleased by the fact that he looks after his father rather than seeing it as a burden. Thank goodness you figured out what kind of person she was before you had kids with her. She's correct. When she first learnt about the Fiona problem, allowing someone else to dictate Peter's moral compass taught him some difficult lessons. About 6 months after the divorce, he came to me looking more like the person I had known for years. "I have to say I'm sorry for everything. Dad, I can't remember who reared me or what loyalty lessons you taught me. A professional manipulated you. Son, she made it appear fiscally reasonable. So I almost kicked you out. But the important thing is that you realized it and left. What led me to become so lost because someone you loved used that affection into a weapon against you. Manipulators do just that." Meanwhile, after spending 6 months on charges of violence and stalking, Fiona returned to live with her parents. Jim sent a stop and desist letter on her remarks, and her social media accounts were suspended for harassment. Her weak defamation action was rejected with prejudice by the court, but the true triumph isn't that Fiona received what she was due. It was rather enjoyable to see her lose what she believed she had gained via manipulation. The fact that my kid regained consciousness and avoided this nuclear weapon is the true triumph. He asked me a question last Saturday as we were grilling burgers, and it made me realize how much he had changed as a result of this experience. "How could you, Dad, recognize Fiona's manipulation of me while I was blind to it? Because the way manipulation works is by giving victims the impression that they are in charge of their own choices. You were never advised to choose Fiona over me. She just created circumstances in which picking her seemed like the right thing to do." Peter was silent for a while. "Dad, I'm happy I didn't lose you, but I'm not worthy of pardon." I touched him on the shoulder. "You do. Son, it takes time to learn certain things, but it's better than never learning them at all." This new hype function was recently released by YouTube. Press the hype button if this article has captured your attention. This video deserves to go viral, and it keeps even more bizarre stories coming your way. It informs YouTube